And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on Talk Radio 1080 WKJK in Louisville, Kentucky, and also on iHeartMedia. We're glad you're joining us. This is the show that tells you about all the great stuff going on at the University of Louisville, where we interview some hopefully interesting guests and talk about research. We talk about alumni, students, and other things. So hopefully the next half hour you'll learn something about the University of Louisville. On the show today, he is the head of UofL's new Envirome Institute, which is looking at a host of things that impact your cardiovascular health, including electronic cigarettes and air pollution. We'll talk with Aruni Bhatnagar. But first, he's the new chairman of the UofL Alumni Board, and his name is Tommy Nolan, and he's here to talk with us about UofL alumni. Tommy, good to see you.
Mark, thanks for having me.
This is the first time we've met.
It is the first time we've met. We've seen each other in passing, but it's
yes.
the first time we've actually met.
And it's good to see you. Well, let's talk about Tommy Nolan a little bit first. You're the head of the Alumni Board, but you've had kind of a journey to get back to Louisville. So when did you graduate from UofL, and then where has that taken you?
Sure. So graduated 2003 from the business school. Immediately got into advertising right out of school, and an opportunity came about to move to New York City. So I moved to New York City in 2007, and it was at that moment that I realized how important it was to be an alumni, because you moved to the city and didn't know a lot of people. Instantly, the first thing I wanted to do was to try and connect and network with other fans and alumni and folks from
Louisville. Want to go watch the games with other folks from UofL?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Because until that point, I think most students, when they graduate, at least I thought that alumni, that's what my parents do.
They're old guys.
Old guys in sport coats eating finger foods at receptions, right?
Right.
And so that's what I thought. And then, moved to New York and connecting with other fans and alumni and people that love Louisville and the university and the city of Louisville, it all made sense. So that was like my journey to really realizing what it meant to be an alumni. And so spent some time in New York for 6 years and kind of led the chapter there and organizing games.
So what's the alumni club like in New York City? Is it big, small? I mean, how many UofL folks we got in New York City?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of alumni in and around the metro. I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's several thousand. If you include New York City, the boroughs, a little bit of Connecticut, New Jersey.
Right.
So it's a pretty big alumni base there, and so while there's a lot of folks there, it's also kind of hard to organize a lot of events because the city's hard to get into sometimes. But we had a great time and super engaged alumni and fans.
So you're there for a job, I assume, right? Right out of college, right?
Yeah, so cut my teeth in visual production in New York City, in video production, and was there, and it's a blast. It was a great time, and moved back to Louisville in 2013 and continued to stay engaged with the Alumni Association, continued on the Alumni Board, and somehow they think I should be a chairperson of the board somehow. So here I am, right?
So here you are. Again, we're talking with Tommy Nolan, who's the chairman of the UofL Alumni Board. And so you moved back to Louisville and started your own company, right?
That's correct.
What's the name of the company, and what do you do?
Yeah, the company's name is Vidionics. We're still in a very startup-style phase of any young company. We have 10 employees. We create digital content for a variety of companies, from healthcare to the bourbon industry to manufacturing. And within that content creation is original storytelling content, content lives on TV, content that lives online, and we've really been trying new areas of production, and that is in the VR realm with virtual reality and also augmented reality.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit about you. So let's talk about you're the chair of the board of the UofL Alumni Board. What is the UofL Alumni Board? What do you do?
Yeah. So we have been the last several years restructuring our board and making a board that's a little more active and engaged. We had the Alumni Association is fairly new, if you will, compared to other universities, and so we've been tasked with really making this board as best as we can. And the several prior boards has really put a lot of time and effort into finding a way to restructure the board and finding those right people that are going to be engaged in moving the mission of the university forward.
I guess that's the bigger question. Well, first of all, there's how many alumni? How many alumni does UofL have?
Total alumni, 140,000.
140,000 in that
worldwide.
Ballpark. Okay. So as a board member then, and as you folks on the board, you're representing all these Louisville alumni from across the globe, really.
Sure.
And you said to move the mission forward of the University of Louisville. So what does that mean? Do you fundraise? Do you just try and get folks to events? What do What are you trying to do?
Sure, all of that. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes
yes.
is the
The answer is yes. So I mean, obviously, me being a fairly young alumni, it's not just about writing a check, right? I mean, obviously, the university needs funds to
Yep.
do these events and push programs forward. But it's not just about giving money. It's your time is money, right? So, for me, volunteering at Welcome Week for our new incoming freshmen and students coming back to campus in a couple weeks and grilling hot dogs and hamburgers and just welcoming kids back to campus, that's one way to give back. And that's very important because someone has to do it.
Right.
Right.
Well, and for them to see somebody that's
Absolutely.
young like you,
Absolutely.
who's got a great job, got a career, to look at you and say, hey, I could be like that guy.
Absolutely.
So good role model, perhaps.
Yes, and spreading the love and the gospel of the University of Louisville and what Dr. Bendapudi is putting forth in the strategic plan. That's going to be our mission as a board coming up this next year and two, for my term at least on the board as chair, to take that strategic plan and mission that Dr. Bendapudi is putting forth and executing on that, so we can look back a year from now, 2 years from now, and say this is what we've done.
I talked to Josh Hawkins, who's the head of the Alumni Association, and he said that the strategic plan is to really think you're focusing on trying to find one or two things that you can accomplish by the time you leave your chairmanship in, 2 years, I guess?
2, yeah.
So is that really what you're focusing on right now?
Absolutely. And so, my first board meeting as chair is coming up, so we're definitely going to dive straight in and find out what is that one or two things as a board that we want to accomplish.
We're talking with Tommy Nolan, who's the chair of the UofL Alumni Board, and we're just talking about what's going on at the University of Louisville and with the alumni. It's no secret. U of L struggled a couple of years ago in athletics. We had, the NCAA came down to the basketball team. We had a president and an administration that caused some problems. But now, got Neely Bendapudi on board. Sports seem to be going great. A couple new coaches. From the alumni view, what are you telling folks right now about the University of Louisville when they ask about it? Or you get the chance to pitch the U of L?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's no secret we had some tough times, but we're in really good hands. And don't give up on us, right? Because there's good things happening. Dr. Bendapudi is incredible. She's amazing, and I can't wait to get started with working on her strategic plan and working with her team and what it is that we need to do as a board. On the athletic side, I mean, Vince Tyree and everything that he's done. I was just at the football golf scramble last week with Coach Satterfield. Fantastic group of guys, and I think we're in really good hands as a university right now. So, I think that the sky is the limit as far as what can take place here at the University of Louisville.
And what do you tell your fellow alumni when they ask you questions about, they're from your old buddies in New York City, the old U of L alumni in New York City, when you talk to them, and they're a little bit detached from the city of Louisville, and they haven't been, I haven't seen all the news stories and other things that happened a couple of years ago. What do you tell them now about the university and, why they should give and why they should become active and start paying attention again to the University of Louisville?
Sure. Well, I will say that just the energy around campus is probably first and foremost the biggest thing. Dr. Bendapudi's energy is contagious, right? She's extremely passionate about the university. I just hope we can keep her for a long time, right?
Some other folks may come calling.
For sure.
We don't want that to happen.
For sure. I mean, I don't see why this university can't continue to do the things that we need to do to be sought after as an incredible institution. We are an incredible institution, but I think under the current leadership, the sky's the limit. I really do.
I do too. All right, well, let's talk about some things coming up. What's on the alumni board? What are some of the big things? We always talk about homecoming, and I guess it's in October this year. But what are some of the other things that the alumni have got planned coming up, and some things you're doing right now?
Sure. So the alumni or the Alumni Association staff does a great job of communicating, all the events that are taking place. So if you haven't been to UofLalumni.org, please go there, get engaged, because we can only do so much, and we need you as alumni to want to be engaged. So go to the website, check out the events, find something that interests you, and be a part of us. So UofLalumni.org for events. And then we've got a couple events coming up. Obviously, I mentioned Welcome Week and Campus Housing Move-In Day on August 14th and 15th. That's a big week for students coming back to campus. We need some assistance with that. Obviously, homecoming is a big week for alumni, so that's coming up this fall. And then football kickoff luncheon's coming up as well. So there's a lot of fun things happening.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think alumni started this year, I think, is this book club idea. Because my daughter was telling me about it. She's an alumni and lives up in Cincinnati, and she's a big book reader. And I think she's joined this this book club idea. So tell us a little bit about that, what you're doing with that.
Sure. So I think over 500 alumni have joined this book club, and it's just another way for alumni to get engaged and network and communicate with each other and find something that we have in common.
Again, we're talking with Tommy Nolan, who's the chair of the UofL Alumni Board at the University of Louisville. And that's an all, I should go back to the board, it's an all-volunteer board. I mean, it's not a paid position, or there's no requirement that you give $1 million to the university or anything like that, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. And as far as the UofL Alumni Association as well, are there dues, or, some schools have dues to be a member and some don't?
Sure, that's a great question. So there is no dues to be a part of the Alumni Association. If you are a graduate of the the graduate of the University of Louisville, you are an alumni for life. And we want you to be involved.
And that's your job to go out and recruit these
Exactly.
people and get them involved as well. So why did you even decide you wanted to be the chair of the board? Well, what prompted that? Or did you just get roped in?
No, it didn't get roped in at all. I grew up a lifelong Louisville fan. I mean, I remember going to basketball games as a kid, and there was no other school that I wanted to go to. I mean, there was no other school on my radar, coming out of high school. And then, like I said, once I had moved to New York and saw the value of what it meant to be an alumni, of being engaged and promoting the university and making Louisville, as Dr. Benaputi has said, a place to learn, work, and invest, right? I'm here to spread that message because it's important, because the city of Louisville needs the university, and the University of Louisville needs the city of Louisville. And so I'm here to kind of spread that love and make this a great place to live, work, and invest.
And, of course, last question, athletics is always a big part of the university and a big thing for alumni to take some pride in their athletic teams. You already talked about Coach Satterfield, the football team.
Yep.
I think everybody's kind of is a wait-and-see attitude on the football team. But certainly the basketball team this year, there's high hopes. I think I saw that Andy Katz had predicted that we're going to go to a Final Four. That may be some high sky, but your thoughts on athletics and the role that plays in helping U of L alumni?
I mean, make no mistake about it, athletics has a big impact on the university as a whole because of hopefully the positive press, right? But yeah, the athletics is, like I said earlier, is in great hands now with Vince and all of the coaching staffs that we have across all the sports, not just football, not just basketball. All sports are just cooking right now.
Yeah, women's basketball.
Yeah, women's basketball, golf, tennis,
baseball.
Baseball. It's all of them.
Yep. Okay. All right. Tommy Nolan, good luck with all you got going on this fall with the Louisville alumni. Congratulations on being elected the chair of the board of the alumni.
Mark, thank you.
Appreciate you being on the show. We've had a few segments on this show that talk about vaping and e-cigarettes and the research being done at the University of Louisville. Aruni Bhatnagar is one of those researchers, and he's also head of the Christy Brown Envirome Institute, which is doing much of that research on e-cigarettes and vaping. So, Aruni, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
All right, we'll talk first about e-cigarettes and the impact on youth and all that kind of stuff, but then I also want to get into some of the other things you're doing at the Envirome Institute. Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Let's move that microphone just a tad closer to you. There you go. All right. Let's talk about e-cigarettes. You guys are doing at the Envirome Institute, you're doing a bunch of research on e-cigarettes. Tell me what you're doing and what have you found so far?
So within the Envirome Institute, we have the American Heart Association Tobacco Regulation Center, which I direct, and which the main purpose of the center is to do research on tobacco products. And certainly because e-cigarettes are all the rage, that's been a focus of our work. And we've been trying to understand two things. First is, are there any sort of cardiovascular effects or some sort of harmful effects associated with vaping? That's the number one question. And the second question is there or can there be any evidence that people who vape actually are more likely to quit smoking?
Okay.
The third thing that we are more concerned about also is this recent, what they call the epidemic in vaping, in which lots of middle school kids, high school kids have taken to these products, and we are alarmed by that rise of popularity of these products among young kids.
Yeah, I saw the one there a study that said it's up 78% among high school students, that the vaping and use of e-cigarettes is up like almost 80%.
Yes, that's true.
Year.
And the ex sort of director of the FDA, the commissioner, said that this is an epidemic, and then we have to be very careful at what is happening to our children. And what is most surprising is not so much that that they are vaping. Kids, they experiment with all different types of products, but because these new products, particularly things like Juul, are so highly addictive that lots of young kids have become addicted to nicotine like chronic smokers. I've heard stories these kids get up in the middle of the night just to vape, just to get their nicotine hit, and we never saw that with kids. You see that 50-year-old chronic old crusty smokers.
Right.
So that's very concerning that there is this high level of addiction that's perpetuating. One of the studies that we completed last year showed that children or young adults who actually vape are twice or three times more likely to transition to other tobacco products.
So they become smokers of real cigarettes.
They become smokers to real cigarettes. They use chewing tobacco. They use hookah and variety of different tobacco products that are now available.
So it's a gateway.
We call it a catalyst. We call it a catalyst.
All right. Well, in my era, we used to call it a gateway.
Well,
gateway drugs.
Yeah. So there is some connotation to that term that some people are sort of resistant to, but I think there is strong evidence that it acts as a catalyst.
Okay. So what are we doing at the University of Louisville then in terms of the research on e-cigarettes? You got guys like Dan Conklin and Rachel Keith that are looking at this. What are they doing to try and figure out what are they looking just at the health impacts, or are they looking at the addictive nature? What's in them? What are they looking at?
So we're doing multiple studies. So one is to look at what is in e-cigarettes, and generally they have nicotine and have some sort of carrier we call glycerol and propylene glycol. So Dan and his team are looking at what sort of things that are emitted, because when you heat the liquid, then you generate things that are not there, right? So these break down products just like you do in tobacco. So he's looking at the tobacco products, but most importantly, he's trying to understand are there any toxic effects of e-cigarettes. And for that, we have a series of experiments with mice. We expose mice to emissions from different types of e-cigarettes at different settings and see what sort of effects occur and whether these effects are just acute effects or the long-term effects. So we are looking at things in the changes in the electrical activity of the heart, right, like a heart rate and heartbeat and so on, and that changes right away on vaping. And then we're looking at some of the chronic effects. So that's one of what we call a toxicology program. But we're also looking at human populations. We've recruited over around 300 people, half in Louisville and the other half in Boston. And we're trying to understand whether the exposure to e-cigarettes or other tobacco products changes any of their cardiovascular function. And then we are trying to compare how bad or how not so bad are e-cigarettes compared to conventional tobacco products.
And that's the gut question, isn't it?
That is the gut question.
That is the really gut question that people are asking themselves right now, because I see these commercials on television by Juul and others that essentially say, if you're trying to quit smoking or you don't want the harmful effects of smoking, try Juul and use these. So the question is that deceptive, or are people, are they really A, less harmful, and B, can they help you quit smoking?
So of all the e-cigarette companies, I would think the Juul is particularly pernicious, and they have captured the imagination of our youth in a way that no other e-cigarette company has been able to do. And part of it is like a false propaganda, so that you can make the switch, which is just like saying that you can quit, right? So it's a vague language where they have no evidence that people who use Juul could actually like to quit. That's a problem. The second problem is that what we have learned from our work is harm depends upon use, right? So if e-cigarettes were 20% or 50% less harmful and you use them twice or 4 times as often, we're back to the same place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So
good math there.
Yeah, I know, but people look at it and say, well, this is half as bad, so then I can use it 3 times as much. No, that's not true. So lots of people I know who have become really addicted, because with a cigarette, it was sort of a finite amount of time. You smoke for like whatever, to 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you're done. But the vaping you can do anytime, anywhere, continuously. So it's a very different use pattern. It's nothing like we've seen before. And so people maintain a level of nicotine in their blood, and then they get sort of very dramatically addicted. As far as quit rates are concerned, there was a paper that was published a few months ago which did what you call a randomized clinical trial, which is the gold standard of how do you assess. So what they found was that e-cigarettes were people who use e-cigarettes were twice as likely to quit than people using nicotine gum. But the quit rate was very low, less than 20%. So 80% of people still use e-cigarettes and conventional cigarettes.
So it's good news, bad news. The good news is more people are quitting using vaping rather than the gum. But the bad news is there's still an awful lot of them that don't quit.
They don't quit, no. And the surprising part of the story is, which was not in the paper and doesn't get mentioned, is that if you use other things, not nicotine gum, but if people who use other things like Chantix and Zyban and other drugs to quit smoking, they actually do better than e-cigarettes.
So the patches and those kinds of things are...
No, there's the pharmaceutical, they're dry, Chantix. Chantix.
Well, I've never smoked, so I haven't had to do this.
So in comparison with pharmaceutical cessation aids, e-cigarettes are not particularly better.
Gotcha.
So if they're not helping people quit, and there are other means which they can use to do it, and all they're doing is just addicting a whole new generation of kids to tobacco.
Gotcha. Again, we're talking with Aruni Bhatnagar, who's a researcher and head of the Christy Brown Envirome Institute at the University of Louisville. We've been talking about e-cigarettes and the research that UofL researchers are doing on electronic cigarettes and vaping and the effects basically on the cardiovascular system, correct?
Right. Heart and heart disease.
Heart and heart disease. All right. Well, let's talk about some other things going on at the Envirome Institute. You've got a number of other categories and things that your researchers have gotten some big grants on from the federal government to look into. One of them is the waste sites that we're talking about, the Superfund sites. So talk about that, because not much has been mentioned on this program about the Superfund sites and what's the research is on that.
Yeah, so the institute, which is we call the Envirome Institute, which actually means a collection of all the environmental influences that we had. We have done a lot of work, generically speaking, we have done a lot of work to understand the human genome, but the genes are only part of the puzzle. The other part is the environment, and so we need to understand the environment as a whole, and we call it the Envirome. And so we're trying to study all the environmental influences on health. That's the basic purpose of the institute.
Right.
So within that, we started this program. It's called the Superfund Program, which we got funding for last year, which is to look at the sites which were where traditionally people have dumped all the waste products within where we are sitting, within like,
we got
like
some
10
in Louisville.
Yes, we have
Superfund
2 or 3 of
sites in
Superfund
Louisville,
sites. There's Lee's Lane and so on. So our charge is to look at these Superfund sites, try and identify what sort of chemicals and toxins are coming out from these sites, because these sites are so big and they have been dumping grounds for so many years. You cannot take everything off and remove it, right? So what we're trying to understand, what type of chemicals are coming out of the site, and the efforts that the EP has done in trying to contain the chemicals by putting concrete cover over them, is that effective?
Right.
And if that is effective, then there is a big tract of land that could be repurposed for other things, because it's a good place in the middle of the town, and so we could use it for other purposes or not. So we are trying to understand A, the type of emissions that are in this area, B, what are the health consequences of those emissions, and C, if there was effective remediation, can we mark that area for reuse?
Is it safe? Is it safe if you want to put soccer fields or something like that on this property, something like that, right?
Well, or maybe it's a walking path or something like that. Yes.
Okay, maybe not having kids rolling around in the grass.
That's right.
Okay, I got you. Also, you've got the Green Heart Project. Tell us about that. That's kind of your baby. So tell us about the Green Heart Project.
Yes, so the Green Heart Project is the idea of trying to test whether increasing greenness in a community would improve the health of the community. For that, so we are trying to do this experiment. It's a very large and ambitious project. It is in South Louisville, between Churchill Downs and the airport, and what we are doing there is to first assess the health risk of the people who live in that area, and then we are going to do a large map of the levels of air pollution in the area. and then plant large established trees in strategic places so that we can shield the people living in the neighborhood from air pollution and see whether that will improve their health. And so this is a 5-year project. We're planning to recruit around 700-800 people for our study. In addition, we're going to plant at least 8,000 to 10,000 large trees and shrubs and bushes to significantly green up the area and see whether that changes anything. And not only that, it may change things that have to do with physical health, but also people feel less stressed in greener environments. People feel more at ease. There is also some evidence suggests that crime rates go down, that there's greater cohesion between neighbors. If you're outside where you live, it's pleasant. You're more outside. You talk to your neighbors. You do go for a walk, and all those sort of active behaviors improve health. Right. So we're trying to follow all of them for the next 5 years.
Talking with Aruni Bhatnagar, who's head of the Envirome Institute at the University of Louisville. We've got about a minute left or so. So on this particular project, the Green Heart Project, you already did a test project at St. Margaret Mary School out on Shelbyville Road, where you planted a bunch of trees in the front yard to see if it changes the health dynamics of the kids in the school as well as the teachers and others. What did you find?
So this was a project to look at, because St. Margaret Mary is right across from the mall, and there's a big freeway.
A lot of traffic, a lot of congestion, air pollution.
Right, so we put a screen of green trees between the road and the school, and we found that there was a decrease in the levels of air pollution across from the barrier, and that there was some signs that the children were less exposed in the sense that they were healthier. They had cells that were more protective and more sort of were signs of healthier circulation. So that was just sort of a small signal from the study, because it was a small study, but that sort of reassured us and gave us the inspiration to do this larger project.
That's you were heading down the right path. And what neighborhoods are you looking for folks in Jefferson County and Louisville for them to sign up to agree to have trees planted in the yard? They were mostly in South Louisville, right?
Yes. So this is Wyandotte and Jacobs and Beachmont.
Okay.
And so we are campaigning to get people to recruit them for the study, come join us, and be a part of this really sort of a grand, ambitious project. And there are areas that we are starting to green this fall.
Okay, so if your bottom line is if you live in one of those neighborhoods, you want some trees planted in your yard, you're willing to have your blood taken a few times to see what the health effects are of the trees in your yard on your health, call the University of Louisville Envirome Institute, right? Is that the bottom line?
Right. There is a Green Heart website. You can go to Green Heart website in Louisville, so that we can come in and assess your health and give you a free tree.
All right. There you go. A free tree or several, right?
Several.
All right. Aruni Bhatnagar, always good to see you. Thanks for the good work you're doing. Thanks for the good work you're doing at UofL.
All right, thank you.
All right, that'll about do it for this edition of UofL Today with Mark Hebert, which you can hear every Monday night at 6 o'clock on Talk Radio 1080 WKJK and iHeartMedia. You can also listen to the podcast of the shows on SoundCloud or watch the programs on Metro TV, which is Louisville's government access channel, or KETKY throughout the week, or on UofL's YouTube channel anytime. Check out all the UofL news, videos, and events at UofLnews.com. Remember that, UofLnews.com. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. Go Cards!